Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. We had some really big news come out this week with the reveal of the Gold Pride cards in Cyberstorm Access, and personally, I think they're really amazing. The deck looks really cool and can now put up so many different interactions. I think that with a ban list due in the next couple of weeks, the deck is in a position to perform really well this format. It seems that a lot of players think so too, as we've seen a bunch of movement all over the market with various Gold Pride cards, as well as some other cards that players think will be good alongside the deck. Let's get started. Alright, so kicking things off, we're going to take a look at a few of the existing Gold Pride cards, starting with Captain Carrie. Carrie is an ultra rare from Photon Hypernova, and it's one of the archetype's main monsters. Its first effect is common among the main deck Gold Pride monsters, where you can special summon it if your life points are lower than your opponent's, but on summon this card searches for a Gold Pride trap card, which is free value. As a level 3, this card helps to go into the new rank 3, or you can combine it with Leon to go into Star Leon as well. Importantly, you want to have access to this card because of the new rank 3, since it can tag out into Captain Carrie during the end phase. Now, so far from what I've seen, Captain Carrie is a 3-of in the deck, regardless of if you're playing it pure or with the punk cards. So obviously right now everything is just speculation. We don't know how the next ban list is going to affect the game. We have some new cards in Cyberstorm Access that will affect how the format looks, so it's impossible to say how Gold Pride will do, and without that it's impossible to say where the prices of the existing cards are going to go to. Good cards from good archetypes will generally be more expensive than good cards from bad archetypes. Now, before the reveals, Captain Carrie was a $3 card, more than a lot of ultras because it's good, and we assumed that the new support was going to be good, but we weren't exactly sure of how good that support was going to be or if it would impact the meta at all. Now that we know that the next wave of support is actually good and Gold Pride looks like a meta viable deck, Carrie has already doubled up in price and currently sits at $6 each. Now, at one point early on, the cheapest copy of the card had gone up to $9 on TCG Player, but the price has already cooled off just a bit. However, if you guys want to play Gold Pride, it might be worth looking at picking up carries for around $5 each right now, because I feel like as a 3-of for an archetype with a lot of potential, the card is still relatively cheap. Next up is one of the 2 secret rares from Photon Hypernova. It is the Crowd Goes Wild. So for those that were speculating on how good Gold Pride might be based on the first wave of support, I think that this was naturally one of the first cards that players looked at. This is a searcher for Gold Pride. You reveal any Gold Pride monster from your hand to search for one with a different name from your deck, and then you can special summon a Gold Pride monster from your hand, but you lose life points equal to that monster's original attack points. So as basically a reinforcements of the army / emergency teleport for the deck, this card seems kind of amazing. The deck basically now has 6 searchers, and consistency is always something that players will look for in a top tier deck. However, from the few builds that I've seen so far, it seems that a lot of players don't actually run the Crowd Goes Wild, choosing instead to run 3 of the new searcher. To be fair, the new searcher, despite being vulnerable to Cosmic Cyclone and Twin Twisters, has the additional potential to give you a draw every turn, and doesn't require you to have another Gold Pride in your hand in order to activate it, so I can see why players would prefer it. I'm not too sure, but either way, each of the spells seems like a really good card for the deck to have access to. So before the reveals, this card was floating between $5 and $8 as people jumped back and forth between saying, the archetype was going to be really good, and then saying that it would be yet another TCG exclusive archetype flop. Well, the card has seen a steady stream of buys within the last 48 hours or so, going from $7 to now settling right at around the $13 mark, with some copies moving for a little bit more than that. Now, if we're just going off of the lists that people are trying and posting online right now, this card might not seem too necessary. However, I think it's really difficult to bet against cards that can search for anything from the archetype, especially when the archetype is so strong. Even if you don't want to spend $13 or $14 on a copy of this card, I think that $10 or so is still reasonable, so that you can at least own a set if you're still interested in playing the deck. One other card straight out of the archetype here, it is Gold Pride Leon. So this is another cool card. I actually thought initially that it wasn't going to see too much play. So on summon, this card lets you target a non-warrior Gold Pride monster from your graveyard and special summon it, but then it locks you into Gold Pride monsters from your extra deck for the rest of the turn. It also lets you quick synchro during your opponent's turn, only allowing you to use Gold Pride monsters as synchro material. So worth noting is that on your opponent's turn, you can actually go into anything that you want, and I think some people were looking at going into the Ravenous Croco Dragon so that you get a draw during your opponent's turn, and then potentially access to a pop as well. Of course, Leon is vulnerable to something like DD Crow, even though that hasn't seen too much play in the last little while. This card is really cool though because you can go into the rank 3 Chariot Carrier without needing to burn your normal summon at all, and that's really free rank 3 access. Now of all the lists that I've seen, this card seems to be a 3 of. Initially I had it pegged as a 2 of just because a lot of those like Wolf Bark, Altair type of effects are really difficult to depend on, but the gold prides all have a lot of synergy and this should be actually a pretty simple effect to be able to resolve, so running 3 copies might be the way to go. So much like the crowd goes wild, Leon was a card that floated between $5 and $8 or so, as people weren't quite sure what to make of the deck. Now, however, Leon has skyrocketed in price. It temporarily jumped up to $20 for the secret rare, before now settling back down a little bit at $15. With this one, do keep in mind that there is also the sneak peek ultra rare printing, which is about $20 right now. Personally, I think I'd prefer the secret, but gold is going to match Captain Carrie and Leon's horse itself is gold, so I guess the ultra does still make some sense. Anyways, for now, much like the other cards, right, this isn't a bad pickup if you're thinking that the deck is going to be a tier 1 solid strategy. It's just really difficult to speculate with how many variables we still have up in the air going into next format. Alright, so moving on from the gold pride cards themselves, we're now going to look at No Punk Foxy Tune. So I think that the punk cards are something that everyone is assuming will be played alongside the gold pride stuff, and for good reason. The punk engine grants you additional access to level 3 monsters that you don't need to burn your normal summon on thanks to emergency teleport, and they also require you to pay life points to activate their effects, putting you in range so that you can activate your gold pride effects more easily. Now over on Pack's channel, he demonstrates how you can use one Z Amen to develop on the punk side and get access to the entire gold pride side as well, and while it's still early, it really shows how strong the deck could be. Foxy Tune is the piece that we're looking at for today, and basically right after the reveals, Foxy Tune was among the first cards to disappear from TCG Player. Foxy Tune is important because you can discard it and one other card to special summon any punk monster from your deck, and that's kind of what allows the entire deck to get going. Foxy Tune has already seen meta play several times over the last year or so, so it should be no stranger to most of us. The card has jumped to $30 recently. It was just starting to cool off and was right around the $22 to $25 mark. However, with the latest reveals, it jumped straight up to $40 per copy, but has now cooled off and is sitting right at around $35. In addition, the collector's rare is up to between $95 and $100 each. Of course, this card is a bit different from others. We know that Grand Creators will be included in the 2023 Megatins, and even though we technically don't have confirmation that the punk cards will be in there, I think it's pretty safe to assume that something like No Punk Foxy Tune will be included, if not earlier in something like Battles of Legend. So naturally, if you guys plan on playing Punk Gold Pride this format, you'll probably need to keep 2 to 3 copies of Foxy Tune for yourself, but if not, then you might be better off offloading your Foxy Tunes while everyone is hyped up and looking for them right now. The next one here is a neat little hand trap, and even though this video is primarily focusing on Gold Pride, Gamma is actually something that is just seeing a little bit more play overall this format. Gamma is of course a hand trap that requires you to run a brick driver in your deck, and you can't have any monsters on your field when you activate it, but it can negate any activated monster effect and destroy the card while also special summoning itself and the driver out of the deck. I think that right now, a lot of Labyrinth players are on Gamma in order to stop Ash from negating their Welcome Labyrinth, but even aside from that, it's not a bad choice to use because it is also a level 2 tuner. This means that for decks that are actually able to go into Excel Synchro Stardust Dragon, you can revive Gamma and go into Baron de Fleur. At the same time, in Gold Pride Punk, you're already playing Emergency Teleport, so if you really need to, you could special summon out Gamma and combine it with a level 8 monster like Foxy Tune or Jam Dragon to go into Baron as well. So yeah, really versatile hand trap that looks like it's going to be seeing more play going into next format. In terms of price, it does seem like all copies of Gamma are trending upwards. The collector's rares are around $250 to $300. We're not going to bother too much with those since most of us aren't going to be picking those up. For the original ultra rares from High Speed Riders, those are about $30 with not too many near mint copies left on TCG Player. The supers from the Extreme Force Special Edition are around $8 to $9 right now. Not too bad, they're the most affordable, like, decent holo printing. Aside from that, there are the Toon Chaos rares, and then the maximum gold rares as well, each at around $3 to $4, but they're of course not as nice as some of the other printings. So I do actually think that Gamma is going to get another reprint soon. If I had to make like an educated guess, I would say that it'll be included in the next Battles of Legend set, either as an Ultra or Secret Rare. I could see it going either way. For now, if I were you guys, I think you should just grab a set of the lower rarity printings for yourself to use for now and see if you can get that rarity bump later on in the year. Onto a couple of other unrelated cards. The first one we're looking at is Ixie's Encore. This is something that has been getting attention over the last few months ever since Pearly emerged as a meta-relevant threat. Now, over in the OCG, Pearly is a deck that is kind of like a towers strategy where you make one big boss monster and then you have a bunch of materials that generate you advantage and you sit on it and beat your opponent down with it. One of the reasons that the deck is so good is because Sleepy Memory allows the monster with it as a material to draw each standby phase, helping the deck to maintain card advantage. Now, over in the OCG, a lot of players are siding Herald of the Abyss, a normal spell that outs the Pearly boss monster which can be searched with triple tactics thrust. However, one option for players to look at is Ixie's Encore, which functionally does the same thing in getting rid of the Pearly boss monster, but it's a quick play spell card that you would be able to use during your opponent's draw phase to prevent them from drawing in the standby phase. Worth noting is that this is a very specific application of a side deck slot, but in the OCG, Pearly is very dominant, so it is worth taking up the spot for. We just don't know exactly how things will shape up here in the TCG. As far as this card's price goes, the card has two different printings, its original from Judgment of the Light and a reprint in the 2014 Megatons. Either copy of this card is now going to cost you around $15, which is actually quite a bit. This actually spiked even higher within the last few days, as we just had revealed some new Pearly cards coming in Duelist Nexus, the core set after Cyberstorm Access, which makes the deck even stronger than it was before. I think that Pearly should be really strong here in the TCG as well, though of course only time will tell, but players will want to have side deck cards ready to use against the deck. However, just like Gamma, I could definitely see Ixie's Encore being reprinted in the upcoming Battles of Legends set, or maybe even in an OTS tournament pack as either a common or super rare. Right now, I think that Ixie's Encore is just a little bit too high for me to justify holding on to, so if I were you guys, I would look at offloading your extra copies of this card, and maybe even the copies that you had set aside for yourself to use. I would hope for a reprint to come before the deck takes over, and consider other side deck options just in case. And finally, the last card for us to talk about briefly is definitely a random one. It's Gazelle, the King of Mythical Beasts. So, just revealed to be coming in Duelist Nexus is the retrained versions of a few of Yugi's monsters, including Gazelle, the King of Mythical Beasts, Berfamit, and Chimera, the Flying Mythical Beast. Honestly, the new monsters are kind of underwhelming. They're probably not going to do anything, even like if you tried bringing them to locals, right? However, it's cool to see these old themes get support, and they actually get a new dedicated fusion spell called Chimera Fusion. It's a typical fusion spell, but while it's in your graveyard and you have a Chimera the Flying Mythical Beast on your field or in your graveyard, you can banish this to special summon a Gazelle King of Mythical Beasts and one Berfamit from your deck and or graveyard. So yeah, nothing too crazy, but technically you could try to make a deck that now uses Gazelle. Worth noting though is that Gazelle only has one old holo printing from Legendary Collection Yugi's World, a rather old set that has seen a lot of old cards spiking in price unexpectedly. Historically, Gazelle has only been a couple of dollars, but with this random support, it's now all the way up to $10 per copy on TCG Player. Now, I definitely do not support buying this card. It's not going to do anything meta relevant at all. But if you happen to have this card lying around in a binder somewhere, go dig them up so that you can offload it to that one crazy person at your locals who is trying to rebuild Yugi's Battle City deck. Alright guys, that is all we have for today's episode. It's going to be really interesting to see how all of the Gold Pride stuff plays out. It definitely seems like it's going to be tier 1 in my opinion. Sure, we're going to have Pearly to compete with it, but we have all of the merch dropping related to it. I think Konami wants the archetype to be good, and we have a ban list right before it's all being released that should be addressing decks like Kashtira, Sprite, and Runic, so theoretically the stage is set for Gold Pride to be a top tier deck. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch, please make sure that you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button for me. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you guys think of the cards we talked about today, what you think of Gold Pride, and what other cards are trending on the market so I can cover them in a future Market Watch. Also, if you guys haven't already, do make sure that you guys hit that subscribe button as well. And until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.